Welcome to part 3, calmer waters or better swimmer. So this time I found myself, I was in a year ago where I prayed, God, these waters are choppy. I'd like some calmer waters, please. And I heard that prayer back, that still small voice, how about I make you a better swimmer? So what we're walking through in this series is how to become a better swimmer. We said we have to accept the process. Last session, we said we receive the next breath. As we receive the next breath, what emerges in us becoming a better swimmer is we improve or upgrade our technique. What happens when you're in the choppy waters and you're freaking out and you're thrashing, if you can shift to just receive the next breath in that calmness, you can actually start to pay attention to the most effective way you swim through the choppy waters. Now what's happening, and this is why I love focusing these teachings on leadership, is right now most people are thrashing about. Why? Well, it makes sense, right? Politics is a zoo. There's bad news everywhere. We feel so, I think, torn down as humans. You're a parasite on the earth. All this terrible stuff. And not to mention the choppy waters we all find ourselves in. The choppy or tough waters you specifically find yourself in, whatever those circumstances are. The question I have when I'm at this point in the journey of becoming a better swimmer is, how do I keep the spark of vision alive? Okay, so I've caught my breath for a moment. How do I live like the vision that I want to see happen will actually happen? I mean, that's the nature of leadership. To see something before others see it and to go after it in a way like you believe it's going to happen, even though it doesn't make sense and even though it may not happen. When I think about this, I think about just this idea that's happened throughout thousands of years of human history. There is mystery in the giving of vision and the receiving of vision. I mean, you look at through all the ancient sources and dreams and states of deprivation where then the vision emerges. Sometimes you're just living and the vision shows up. All kinds of different ways. And honestly, for me, the only place that I see the biblical evidence center around the most is how to receive the vision and then what to do with it when it's there. So there's a lot of mystery in the giving. In fact, in my own life, I had that happen. I had an experience when I was 18 years old that was very mysterious to me, very powerful. It actually shifted the focus of my consciousness, where I was purposeless and where I had no mission and where I had no direction. It immediately shifted everything within me. And there was a mystery in that, okay? And as I've discerned that moment, now being 46, so 28 years later, I can look at it and see what was pure about it, where my own insecurities were at work there. And what I've learned about that is what it means to lock in on the main piece that keeps the vision alive, keeps the spark alive, that helps me continue in the choppy waters to upgrade my technique. And the best story I can give you to help you understand that is the story of Joseph. The story of Joseph goes through these 4 movements that if you can start to learn and pay attention to these 4 movements, you can really start to discern where you are in your choppy waters as you upgrade the technique and of your swimming so that you can continue to live in such a way that you see the vision happen. Whatever that vision is, the vision of the business you're building, the vision of the leader you want to be, I want to help you make sense of that through this. So as we look at Joseph's life, the first piece is a vision arrives and disappoints. A vision arrives and disappoints. So Joseph doesn't actively, we don't see in any way, go out and seek this vision. Just like I didn't at 18, he didn't either. But he's in a circumstance, in a situation where he has this dream. Now, ancient people thought differently about dreams than we do. That's the mystery of the giving of the vision and the receiving of it. I know there are times where I have a weird dream, maybe because of what I eat, but more often than not, if I remember a dream, I try to just pay attention to it. What might the message be here? It doesn't mean it's literal. There's a lot of depth here. Ancient people appreciated this more. So Joseph has this dream or this vision. He doesn't really yet have the maturity to discern it, to know the phases that happen when you are having a vision, how to deliver that vision. Instead, he just blurts it out basically to his brothers. And in this situation, as happens when you share a vision that other people are going to be bowing down and worshiping you, basically, which is the kind of the idea of the dream, They didn't receive it too well. They get jealous. And Joseph was already in a place where his dad is playing favorites with him, and he's playing favorites with him, and he's sharing this dream. So in his brother's jealousy, in their insecurity, and that's what happens so often. The world can't handle the fullness of your vision and what you really want to see happen and what you deliver. There will always be people that in their insecurities are pinged by it. Even if Joseph was immature in how he delivered it, it still happens. So Joseph's brothers, they're angry. They basically throw him in a pit. They're going to kill him. One of the brothers has to stop him. They sell him into slavery. So that happened. It was a horrible practice, and they sell him into slavery, and he's taken basically to another country, and being taken to Egypt, he starts working in the household of a major leader. And the story records, because Joseph is a great leader, that everything he touches is basically made better. That Joseph is the number 2 to this number 1 major leader. And because of his number 2 awesomeness, the number 1 just totally relaxes. He knows he can trust him. He knows he's going to make everything better. And wouldn't that be great, right? The story's over. In fact, if I'm Joseph, I'm kind of interpreting the moment to go, all right, the dream is happening. Finally, I know some of you have something in you that you're like, these little shifts occur, these little developments occur, and you're like, finally, it's happening. No doubt he would have been feeling that, except it wasn't happening yet. Potiphar, that was the leader's name. Potiphar's wife basically tries to pull Joseph into an affair. Joseph runs the other way. No, he is not going to compromise his values. He's made a decision before he gets into that moment that he's not going to compromise. So he runs the other way, and then he's rewarded for his integrity. No, he gets falsely accused. And in getting falsely accused, he goes to prison. I know you want to avoid being misjudged like crazy. I get it. There's no way you're going to lead at the edges that you're going to lead at with all the effectiveness you can lead at, and everybody's going to totally understand you. In fact, this is what Paul is saying when he says, I want to know the power of his resurrection and the fellowship of sharing in his suffering. I want to know the power of the resurrection with Christ, but if I'm also going to know the fellowship of sharing in his sufferings, I'm going to know moments where I'm misjudged. Now, I would not wish on you any moments like this, where the misjudging causes you to lose so much. It does happen. We can't be afraid of being misjudged. We have to make the decisions. We have to have the courage to do the hard things, to make the right decision when it's not easy. And if some of you are in a place where you've made that decision in a wrong way and you think, I've ruined things. No, there's grace, there's restoration, there's hope. You may have been deformed by that choice, but you can be reformed as you enter back into the process of transformation. Go back to the vision. So the vision arrives and disappoints. The second movement is it gets worse. The vision arrives and disappoints. He gets jealousy from his brothers. He gets sold into slavery. He thinks it's going to get better. He's in Potiphar's house. It's going well, but no, it gets worse. And what you see happen in Joseph's life is about a 13-year period where he's now in prison, maybe 13 years total, where he's in prison languishing. This vision isn't happening. Now, I'm going to show you what Joseph did that I think is skipped over all the time that's so powerful and transformative. But before I show you the positive of what he did, I just wanted you to imagine the negative of what so many others do. Okay? So a vision arrives, this high water mark, it disappoints, right? He's got jealousy from his brothers. He's sold into slavery. He goes to Potiphar's house. It's going to get better. He gets falsely accused. It gets worse. Now he's in prison. Now, for most people, they believe it gets worse. They believe again. They start to see it happen. It gets worse. For most people at that moment, this is where the insecurities start to really show up. This is why we see all the time CEOs and leaders we work with where they start to get the organization up to a certain point, but they haven't yet finished the work of leadership development or culture building. And so they get distracted and they're not as engaged, and they switch to either just something that fills their life in a way of hobby or fun and starts to crowd out the focus on the mission, or they get distracted with another mission. And then a problem develops and they have to switch their engagement back to the organization. So what happens when we're in a place that we lose sight of the main mission, that we get distracted? The insecurities start to show up. So if that's you and you're in a place where you're distracted from your team or you're distracted from the main mission, some of these insecurities are going to be insecurities you'll see very clearly, very quickly. But let's just imagine Joseph in prison, not handling it well because of what's been this up and down journey. You know, he might come to a place that he gets so insecure that he wonders, and the scripture records for us that he's in prison and he's given responsibility. But let's imagine he doesn't handle it well and he's not given responsibility. And he just gets insecure and just wonders, like, where do I really fit in all this? It's like, am I really needed? Am I really important? Do I really have value? I mean, these are big doubts that leaders feel all the time. Maybe Joseph would have felt like, oh, I'm never going to be able to reach the heights of what that vision was. Look how trapped I am. He could have felt overwhelmed by the problem of being in prison. And he would have just been so succumbed to the desolation of that he would have felt despair. And in that despair, not been able to see what was happening around him, just absorbed in the overwhelming problems. He may have just felt like, man, I don't have what it takes. I'm an imposter. Just totally within himself at that suffocation of that insecurity. Maybe he would have just been so hard on himself, almost like internally giving himself lashes, like, you suck so bad. Look how you've screwed this up. You haven't made it work. You haven't made it count. What's your problem? Maybe he would have been in a place that he would have just told himself how terrible it is, these choices that he's made, and just look back with regret and how much I suck and I've screwed up and I've ruined all this and I can't recover. Maybe he would have developed a real aggressive edge because look how people take advantage of me and I've got to push them away and keep them away at all costs. Whatever's happening in Joseph's life, it would be very easy for him to imagine him becoming insecure. Look how these circumstances haven't worked out. Look how my family was disloyal to me. I can't trust anybody or any situation, and just this erosion within starts to occur. Whatever you think about where Joseph's life is at, it would have been very easy for him to do this. It would have been very easy for him to look at his prison sentence and say, I'll never get to the mission that was here, that was within me. I'm stuck here. And in all the melancholy of that, just keep his head down all the time. But the text records something amazing. And here's what the text records that's so amazing. That there were two people out of Pharaoh's court that were in prison. And it says that Joseph was trustworthy, that he handled himself well in these circumstances, and he was leading well. And he didn't have these insecurities dominating his reality. And rather than having his head down, he had his head up. And it says this, he noticed what was happening. He noticed the emotional experience of these two people from Pharaoh's court. They were having a dream and they were disturbed. And he offered up his skill to interpret their dream. This is the understated linchpin of this story. This is the fulcrum moment. Here's what I want you to understand. That when the lights went out, when Joseph was in prison, when he was suffocating with all this struggle, he did not drop his head in insecure shame, but had his head up, noticing others, still upgrading his technique, still working on his skill, still developing himself to use his ability to translate and interpret the dream so they could be transformed. Now, here is what I'm so excited about. Your current moment where you're in a choppy water is trying to upgrade your technique, something that you do as a skill that impacts and changes the world. And like Joseph, if you will stay the course, if you will learn how to not be drowned by your insecurities, but in this moment to still see the pain, the need, the cause of others, and not be overwhelmed with self-pity, you will be the kind of person who consistently shows up. You'll keep the spark of vision in your eye, and you will see this dream happen. Now, it may happen different than you think, right? In timing and in application. That happened for Joseph. He keeps his eye on the ball. He is showing up as this leader to help bring transformation, even though there's every reason he has to have his head down. And he says this, he's the OG self-promoter. He goes, hey, remember me when you leave here. Remember me when you leave here. And what happens? They forget about him until like a year later. Pharaoh has a dream. Pharaoh needs an interpretation. And in needing that interpretation, Joseph comes, they bring Joseph to him. Joseph interprets the dream, and you know the story. He shoots right up to number 2. The dream, the vision happens. He's in the number 2 spot in the most powerful country of the world at that time. Here's what I would say. The vision arrives and disappoints. You got to know that. Second, it gets worse. Third, there is a moment you'll wish you've prepared for. That while others would have told you to give up on it, while others would have told you to quit, you persevered with that vision that you received. There was something in you, and you kept upgrading your technique. That in the midst of the choppy waters, you noticed how you were swimming, and you tried to swim with as much effectiveness as possible. Like, this is why you have a mission. This is why you're here, to order the chaos. And it's not about you exerting perfect control. It's about you having the mindset to cooperate with the circumstances and continue to upgrade your skills. And if you can do that, and if you can be that kind of person, fourth reality, you're going to have to forgive those who hurt you along the way. So Joseph's brothers come. They don't know it's Joseph, and they're visiting to try to get grain because there's a famine in the land. And Joseph's leadership has protected so many, and they want food. And Joseph has to test them to make sure that they're different than they used to be. So he tests them with the younger brother to make sure they're going to look out for him in a way that they didn't look out for him. And they look out for the younger brother. And rather than Joseph being bitter, so he's in this place that he's able to pay the price for the vision, and he's not getting angry at his circumstances. He's staying calm and upgrading his technique. But rather than getting bitter, he forgives. He sees they've become something different. And he's an agent of restoration. And the big statement there is, what was intended to harm me is used for good. Everything that has come against you is for your good, to shape you to be the kind of person that when nobody else sees you, that when you are in the prison, when you are trapped, you keep upgrading the technique and you see the vision come to pass. How do you keep your spark? How do you stay at the edge of your abilities no matter what's happening? You live this like Joseph did. And then you come to the place that you can be the restoration, the person of restoration like he was. I heard Terry Crews tell a story, the ex-NFL player, now actor, years ago, about reaching the point that he was strong enough, physically strong enough to beat up his dad. And his dad had been abusive to his mom. And he went through just a terrible experience of realizing that wasn't going to make him feel better, and went to some counseling. And I won't ever forget, I don't think, him saying that all the rage he had and all the anger he had shifted when he realized, I would choose my dad because my dad made me me, and I like being me. If you can learn who you really are through all the circumstances that would cause rage, to forgive others, still got to have healthy boundaries, like Joseph did. No circumstance you've been through works against you. It instead can work for you. So God does a great work through you, like Joseph. That's what it means to be a better swimmer. Peace.